What's going on, guys? And welcome back to the Networking Podcast. So, first, I guess we have some explaining to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So late on releasing a podcast.
Indeed. So, for those of you who have been like sitting there refreshing your RSS feeds, we know there's so many out there. You would have noticed we haven't published a podcast for a couple of weeks, and there's a pretty good reason, although it's not a great outcome, but it's a good reason, I do think. So we did manage to get the man, the myth, the legend who we've asked at least twice to come on the podcast. Well, we've asked on the podcast and then directly asked.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, I'm pretty sure we only asked him once.
Yeah, so we did manage to get an awesome guest on the last podcast, and as with Murphy's Law, something bad happened, and the one non-redundant part of the production chain had some problems. And anyway, we've been trying to clean that up over the last...
We had some, you can make it more clear. We had some audio issues. Basically, we had this amazing podcast recorded. Two, in fact. We had two amazing podcasts recorded with Rob Shakir. And they were truly amazing. I spent most of my time listening, and because he had some amazing things to say, and it was really, really interesting. And then we wrapped that up. We were super pumped about the content, get ready to edit and send it out. And we realized that the audio we recorded from Rob was really choppy, like really bad, to the point
really
where the content's there, but you can barely listen to it as it is. So we've spent the last 2 weeks reaching out to friends and trying to find out how we can possibly recover this, because I don't think it's possible to have a redo of the same conversation we had. It just wouldn't be as organic, and it certainly wouldn't be as interesting. And I doubt Rob would want to re-record another 2 or 3 hours with us as we did last time, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
So what we've been doing is trying to make the best of a really shitty situation with that sound. And we're making progress. We have some ideas. At the end of the day, I think we've decided amongst us that we will release it. It may potentially be with fairly bad sound, but if you just focus on that content, it's really good. It's worth it.
Really,
even with
really
the bad
good
sound quality,
yeah.
It is so worth listening to. But we're hoping to have some of that audio fixed. But that's what we've been doing for the last 2 weeks. It's not that we haven't been trying to get this out the door. It's that apparently the quality of the sound is so bad that it's almost unrecoverable. But we're doing our best. If you happen to be someone out there who knows how to fix these things, feel free to reach out, I guess. But
without any knowledge of the problem, we're sure you're out there, our saving grace.
Just audio issues, just audio dropout. It's just a nightmare. The audio is just a nightmare. Anyway, yeah, we messed up big time.
Yep, we did. So lesson learned here. Every part of the production chain has to be redundant. I don't know how we're going to do that. I guess in future podcasts we'll figure it out. But yeah, learn from our lesson, guys. If you're recording podcasts, every part has to be redundant. Every single part.
And I'll say, by the way, before recording this podcast, so before getting on here, we spent the last, how long? We've been on this probably 3 hours together, last 3 hours together.
Yeah.
More than that, actually, looking at the time. Trying different things again together to try and fix the audio. And I'll be honest, it's pretty depressing. So I'm really hoping to... stay positive as we do this podcast, but it's been pretty depressing trying to solve this audio problem for the last 3 hours. So
it has.
Apologies if we sound a little down and negative. Hopefully we don't sound too negative when it gets down to the content of this podcast.
Exactly, because we're doing another acquisition podcast today.
Yeah,
so
we are. Let's get excited about it.
Yeah, we'll try to remove some of the letdown emotion, because this actually is a pretty good one. I know it's one that's very close to your heart, Erwin.
To mine? Why?
Yeah, because you're the Apstra guy.
I'm the Apstra guy. Ongoing joke. Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah. So Juniper has now acquired Apstra. So
all right, we're done. So
announced
thanks for listening.
So that is basically the topic of this podcast. Now, Juniper's been on a little bit of an acquisition bender, so to speak. They're trying to position themselves as the new Cisco, I think. Just acquire everybody, and then when there's no competition left, world domination achieved, right?
It's worked for Cisco.
Yeah. So I guess to quickly go over the previous acquisitions, because we've done podcasts on at least one of them, and I'm only talking about the big ones, not the relatively small ones. But Miss Systems in March 2019, 405 million. The whole campus radio awesomeness. 128T, which we did do a podcast on, that's closing later this year. That was worth around 450 million. So that's 855 million spent on acquisition since March 2019. Yeah. And if you're listening to this in the future, wondering why Juniper reached world domination,
this is why.
this is why. Or today is December 10th, 2020.
Well, the thing is, we don't actually know how much they spent on Apstra, though, right? That hasn't been been announced. I think there's financial experts are claiming out there that it would be, air quotes, below $400 million. But we don't actually know how much they spent on it, so who knows?
All right. So, yeah, there hasn't been a lot of information that's come out of it, mostly speculation from industry pundits like us. I guess we should consider ourselves as part of that group now. We know about Juniper, obviously. That's not going to be news to anybody. But let's talk a little bit about Apstra. All right. So I know you spent some time during Networking Field Day looking at some content, figuring out some stuff. Yep. We, of course, have a very close friend who is a product manager at Apstra. So we got the contacts, yo. We got the lowdown.
Yeah, but we didn't get much information from that contact. I asked our very good friend at Apstra to send me some, just like generic, like nothing private, like white papers, that type of stuff. Yeah. So I didn't have to go and sign up on their website, and I was punted over to their YouTube channel. So I didn't get that much information. So I did watch some YouTube videos, and I did sign up. Gave them my email address to get read some white papers, and this was a while ago. But anyways, we can talk about what they do, I guess.
Maybe let's start exactly there. What do they do? So I try to avoid saying intent.
No, impossible. I can't. Yeah, I'll tell you why. It's impossible because I think Apstra would claim that they were the one of the originators. Yeah, the pioneers of the terminology intent-based networking. So we can't avoid that as much as we typically try and do. But basically, at the end of the day, they built a Fabric Manager to start off with. I guess I don't know where they started, but Fabric Manager, it's based on intents. The general idea is you declare your business intent or your intent in this Fabric Manager, and it goes and generates the appropriate config for the appropriate devices. One of their claims to fame was multi-vendor support, so you could deploy and multitude of vendors. I guess Juniper, Cisco, Arista, the big ones, and then more recently Sonic, which we can talk to in a little bit. And they would go and push the appropriate configurations and do the validations from an intent perspective that the intent was met. And then they've built on that and added more analytics and monitoring, kind of like day 2+ type operations to the whole platform. So it's really a data center fabric management platform that's multi-vendor, that is intent-based everything. So intent-based configuration, I don't know, intent-based networking, intent-based analytics, intent-based everything. That's the general plan.
You're going to say it many, many times more, I'm sure, but maybe we should talk a little bit about intent.
Yeah.
And at least what the vision is for it. Granted, as is typical with our industry, the marketing whiz-bangs have gotten out of control, and now everything's intent-based.
Yeah. I mean, the general idea behind it is that you know, if you go into a traditional networking world that's not intent-based, you'd have a config. You would either push it manually. You would either generate it manually in the CLI, or you would generate a config and push it down, and then that would be it basically. So it's stateless, kind of push the config down, assume that the commit was correct, and therefore it's running the intended configuration. I guess with intent-based is you're gonna now validate something beyond the fact that the configuration was pushed down. You're actually going to retrieve some state from the device, and maybe correlate state and configuration and state from different areas of the device to validate that the intended business logic or the intended business driver behind that configuration change you're making was actually met. So it's not just about, hey, here's my config and validate that the config got applied correctly. It's here's what I want to do. I want to create a layer 3 service that meets this particular criteria and security rules, and maybe I don't know, for particular policies to import and export routes to outside your data center, whatever it may be that you're doing, and then it's going to push that down, and then using stateful retrieval of information from the devices, then correlate that to tell you whether the intent was met. I think that's the general idea, unless you tell me otherwise. But
I mean, I don't know. I think you, I think you aced it. I think there's one piece of that's worth breaking up, and they often, I guess, go together, because there's the abstraction of intent. Intent is just I'm defining A to equal B. So if A is not equal to B, then try to do something to make A equal to B, right?
Yep.
But I guess we kind of rode this wave for a normalization platform as well, in that, the northbound is typically sold as a simplified interface for giving business intent and things like that kind of language.
Correct.
So
yes,
whilst the two aren't 100% linked, they tend to be from a go-to-market perspective. Just, I don't know if that was a convenience thing, but I did notice that when I was starting to look into it, that we've had intent-based platforms in the past in the IT world, for example, Kubernetes being a great one. The Kubernetes controller is just trying to make sure the cluster state is in the state that it is meant to be in, that it was configured. So this is kind of bringing it into networking. And to be clear, the Apstra don't own any physical hardware. They don't own any software stack necessarily that runs in the data center. They're focused on kind of this abstract controller piece. I guess multi-vendor being a big part of the story, because they don't have hardware to sit underneath. So that's a little bit on what intent is. How do you know some of the mechanics of how this works under the hood?
I'll tell you what I do know.
So they have you like that baseball just smash out of the park.
So from my understanding is, where they can, they run agents on devices, so on switches, and these agents are going to be responsible for pushing config, I guess, to the local device. Now, from my understanding, that's mostly done using whatever the local device offers as interface. So that could be a local API server on the device. It could be even just logging into the CLI and pushing a config. And that same thing goes for retrieval information. So when they retrieve what I think they refer to a lot of as telemetry or statistics or state, it's all done through this agent that's sitting on a device that is either doing local CLI text scraping of show commands to retrieve specific information, or if the device offers the capability, it would retrieve that information via some sort of API. And then it normalizes that data and then sends it up to a database of sorts. And then, so if you have multiple vendors, I guess the normalizing of the data becomes fairly important, and storing it in a normalized way. And then I assume if the device doesn't support agents, I think most data center switches these days are Linux-based and do support running these types of agents on them. But I guess if they didn't, they'd have to do some sort of integration from a northbound perspective into whatever northbound interfaces the switches offer. I don't know if they do or not, because I suspect most switches they operate with do.
It's tickle scripts. Tickle scripts, baby.
Tickle scripts.
Let's do it.
So yeah, I think their interface from their I don't know if they call it a controller. I'm not too sure what they call kind of what you would as a user log into would have a UI retrieve information from a database, and the interaction between whatever that system that is to the devices is through this agent that's sitting on a device.
Right. So I guess where I tended to hone in on Apstra was the normalization layer.
Yeah.
But there's actually a much bigger part to this with their probes and everything, right? So it's not just the fat pipe telemetry approach. It's the actually going back to the podcast that no one's heard yet. What our friend Rob Shakir was talking about, and that you should only be using telemetry data that you have a valid use for. If you don't have a reason to collect it, then don't collect it.
Exactly.
I do wonder if things like OpenConfig maybe compete at least for one part of their solution, the normalization layer, and other, I guess, normalization competing projects. But I think what Apstra's got is kind of the end-to-end stack, right? I mean, just being able to normalize data does not give you intent at all. You still need some kind of closed loop validation. You need something stitching it all together. So there's clearly a decent amount of value that's brought there.
the data normalization from a config standpoint to the device is what would compete with OpenConfig, right? I mean, the general idea is, but then again, that's configuring specific network constructs, and normalizing that across vendors is what Apstra can do, and that's what one of the things that they advertise, which it would be in direct competition with something at OpenConfig, right? But as you said, it doesn't at all. OpenConfig by itself doesn't at all address intent, and and then the rest of the stuff like analytics and sort of stuff. Well, I mean, analytics, I guess it does if you're doing streaming telemetry based on OpenConfig models, but.
All right. Yeah, it makes sense. So more on the strategic side. So Apstra is this. It's competing with a lot of the vertically integrated stacks. And to be clear, I think this is a data center, maybe smaller campus style data center play. That's where you're going to see this getting deployed. I initially I was worried that Apstra wouldn't be able to compete with like the likes of ACI and Arista with CloudVision and Nokia now with SR Linux and FSP, and that they're often kickers in deals. The control, like the fabric manager, is almost a kicker in some deals. Not that that happens all the time, but I was wondering if they'd be able to compete there. Being moved into Juniper, of course, helps a lot with that. But I want to talk a little bit about Sonic, because this was the other kind of dark horse, right?
Yeah. And more recent for them, I think, right? I mean, there's been a lot of noise made about their support for Sonic recently. So, isn't it? I mean, I think you and I both kind of saw that as a great go-to-market for them. Sonic, very difficult to manage, didn't have an orchestration system. So when you get into the smaller data centers that are looking for that integrated solution, where you have a fabric manager and you have your fabric operating system, that didn't really exist, right? And so Apstra really played to me, fit in very nicely in bringing Sonic to more people by providing that abstraction layer, and also, one of the things that they in their announcements with Sonic is, and I saw a demo of this I think at Tech Field Day, which was actually pretty cool, was just basically literally having a config for having intent declared, having that deployed on your Arista switches, and then being able to rip out the Arista switch and put a Sonic-based switch on Edge Core or something like that, and not having to change anything from your perspective, from an operator's perspective, because it was all configured in as intents in Apstra, and then you put Sonic in place, right?
Yeah, that is super
Which was kind of
interesting.
cool to see.
Yeah, because that management layer definitely is the problem with, I would say, widespread adoption. Most people that have it deployed in any kind of serious capacity have developed their own fabric managers to a degree, or just absolutely have developed their own fabric managers. So there isn't a lot of support there, which I think limits its consumption. So that seemed like the logical go-to-market, but being acquired by Juniper, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a hidden angle Juniper has. We know they are contributing to Sonic. They have the ability to run their routing stack inside Sonic now. So there's clearly some movement from them to kind of embrace the open sources of the world.
Yeah.
Do you think this is going to compete directly with something like... I mean, actually, to wind that back a little bit, Sonic versus Junos Evo with Apstra in the mix seems like there's a problem there, right?
I mean, you mean there's a problem in that Juniper has potentially the ability to position either or. Yeah. I think they would always position
their own.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's only in the event that they're getting pushback, or there's a particular affinity for Sonic from their customer, then they have that option. But actually, that is interesting, because Juniper did make an announcement not so long ago about their support for Sonic on some of their switches. And that's a public announcement, and you can go on their website and look it up. Curious as to see where they're going with that, like what the plan was there, who they're trying to support with that, and why.
Yeah. It seems weird when you're building your own NOS, and it's a recent investment from them. Well, they've been working on it a while, but it is clearly an evolution story. See what I did there? from BSD-based Junos. So it just seemed weird. I think maybe that saps some of the value from Apstra, but as is typical with us, maybe we're overlooking where they're positioning it, because clearly a lot of the industry pundits were focused on the fact that they'd made 3 acquisitions that were mostly focused at the edge, not necessarily data center. I think that's mostly where Apstra was being positioned. Maybe I'm wrong. Some of like the design intent and cable maps and stuff, I feel like it's kind of purpose built for reasonably large scale data centers.
Yeah, I think it was data center for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think this fits in with the previous acquisitions at all? Because that's clearly what a lot of analysts are saying, that Mist plus 128T. So we've got kind of wireless AI versus some SD-WAN style session awareness, and now a fabric manager to go along with it. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I don't see like I don't see how they all tie together per se, other than you can take these analytics that you're going to be collecting from Apstra and feed them into Mist AI, and maybe Juniper wants to AI all the things. And like, you know, we talked about on the 120T acquisition podcast, we talked about Mist, I think a little bit about their AI and Marvis, their little bot. And we did discuss that you and I, at least you and I personally, as network engineers, would have no interest in trying to interact with a bot versus just getting the information. So, I mean, there could be some, I mean, surely they're going to try and push the AI story. How much of that is like going to turn into actionable and like real usable product? Like, in other words, am I really going to use Mist AI to control my data center and operate my data center? Maybe. I don't personally see that, but I'm sure they're going to try and market it that way. I mean, I'm sure Juniper is going to be pushing for collecting those statistics, punting them over into Mist AI, and then being able to, you know, answer questions and expose information to the end user. Now, how you tie that in from the data center to the WAN, which is now session based apparently, to the wireless, like I don't see the correlation between them. And those are 3 different domains, which I tend to think don't have that much in common. End to end. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to, like, I think there's fairly distinct separation points in those domains, and correlation between them isn't going to be necessarily very useful and easy to do. Like, to go from Wi-Fi to the WAN to the data center and back. Like, I don't know what you're tracking there, but individually, like feeding the data into Mist AI and having Mist be able to control the data center, being able to control your WAN, or being able to control your wireless, and it's like maybe a single interface and a similar AI system, that's fine. I could see that as being a story.
Oh, I see. So you're thinking Mist sits above this, and it's using these new acquisitions as kind of functional owners of a domain that it can interface with.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I was thinking along the lines of like maybe Apstra, the performing intent-based black magic on 128T kind of session-aware routers. That's where my head went initially.
That could be also it. I mean, that I didn't think. I didn't think about the other way. I mean, sure, why not? I mean, actually, no. I mean, I'm still stuck on the whole 128T thing. Like, I actually don't. I actually haven't seen like. Yeah. Let's not rehash that podcast. Go listen to the 128T acquisition podcast. But Apstra to me was if you're Juniper and you have a couple fabric manager, you have Contrail fabric manager, you have QFX sorts of manager. From my understanding, neither of those are very strong. The story for data center management wasn't looking very good. And you can go and buy Apstra, which is, I mean, from what I know, is fairly strong in data center fabric management.
Do you think this is replacing Contrail Fabric Manager?
I think so. Yeah, I think this is, for me, it's like Juniper just went and like bought a good fabric manager that they can put in place, and they can now sell, and now they can use, and they have a good story for their data center. Oh, and as a bonus, we can feed these, analytics into Mist AI and round out our marketing story around now bringing AI to the data center, right? Like that's how it works to me. 128T, I'm still scratching my head as to what they're going to do with this session aware business and where they're going to place these 120T routers, because without the 120T routers, you have very little information to collect. So that part I'm still struggling on the value. But Apstra I see as a good purchase and valuable to Juniper from the perspective of they didn't have a very strong data center management story, and now they do, and who knows what they're going to do with Sonic, right?
Yeah, I wonder if they'll position kind of a vertically integrated stack with Junos Evo for the long tail of the enterprise market, because I guess 128T fits in there well, right? And then maybe position the Sonic Apstra story for a tier 2, tier 3s or something like that. I don't know.
Sorry,
Maybe
where
they're
do you see the
carving out
128T? Where do you see? Repeat that. Where do you see the 128T?
in the long tail of the enterprises, which I think is where it's getting some of its revenue today.
Today, yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't know. I agree. The 128T acquisitions is a little strange. Clearly, Juniper wanted to get some more presence in the SD-WAN. I mean, obviously. I think the technology you and I weren't sold on from a scalability perspective. Go listen to the podcast. But
listen to the podcast.
One of the analysts that I read was talking about at least Mist had a lot of market presence when they were acquired. 128T did not. Apstra, I guess from a large market, doesn't have a huge amount, but they're known, right? Like it's you and I knew of them, of course, but we have friends who have gone there. I think it has like enough people know that it's pretty active in open communities and stuff like that. So, but I don't think it was bought for revenue reasons. I don't think they've necessarily got like a boatload of
I think they
customers
just
and
have
hundreds
good
of
tech.
millions.
Like I just think they have good tech. I think that it actually works.
So they're
well.
tech acquisitions then, yeah.
I think so. I think Apstra was a tech acquisition. It was filling a hole that Juniper had. It's a good tech acquisition. I think that the stuff works and works well, and it's an easy shoe in and fit into what they want to do now. Maybe there's a grander vision about tying. Maybe there's a huge strategic vision on this.
The Holy
I don't
Trinity,
see,
dude. It's the Holy
but
Trinity.
I don't. That's the part I'm missing. I don't see. This is the part that I'm struggling with. And that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I'm personally struggling with that strategic vision as to how they tie this all together. Because to me, they're too different. The domains they're targeting are too different.
You think they were just weak on fabric management? Control Fabric Manager wasn't taken off, and this gave them a story, and they bought a bunch of good tech.
Good tech, and the bonus is it nicely fits into they can collect these analytics and statistics and feed that into their Mist AI system. So it works. Like it just kind of like the story lines up. I don't know how real the Mist AI controlling your data center is going to be. Like that, as an operator, like if I'm going to do this, what does that look like? I mean, as we discussed previously, like that is not something that either of us would want to do. But
yeah,
maybe people do, and I'm missing.
Maybe we're not the target audience.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah. All
Correct.
right. I have nothing more intelligent to say about Apstra and Juniper.
Me neither. Me neither. Good job, Juniper. We'll see where they go with it. We'll see where they go with it, I guess.
Yeah, we will. We will. I mean, at least my only concern was the insertion into their data center story, because that's where I kind of placed it as well, given on where Apstra was being positioned. And they had like a few competing products, right? There's the whole Q Fabric thing. There's this Contrail and Control Fabric Manager.
Yeah. But there's one thing that I know we're trying to wrap up, and we'll wrap up here in a second, but the one thing that we should maybe do a podcast on is Sonic in general, because I think that like Apstra only supported technically enterprise supported Sonic from either Dell or EdgeCore or whoever had enterprise.
So it's not upstream
Sonic.
Right?
Correct. Yeah. So I don't know what Juniper supports. Like, does Juniper just support upstream? Do they have their own? I don't think they have their own Sonic distro.
Yeah.
Of sorts.
I don't know if they've fully figured out the story. Like most of what I saw from Juniper and the Sonic ecosystem was them mostly just dabbling to see where their technology and Sonic could kind of intermingle. Mm-hmm. Like that's what we saw with them bringing in CRPD on top of Sonic and running it as the control plane. Yeah. I don't know if they necessarily have like a go-to-market strategy around Sonic. I could be wrong. Maybe I just haven't seen it or they're not public about it. But there's a bunch of I would say like big iron vendors that are dabbling in Sonic right now because there's enough.
Go ahead, because that's the part that I'm.
Because there is enough motivation from people that are okay with having, let's say, I'm trying to use my words carefully here. They can solve the management and the actual operational overhead that Sonic brings. I'm going to word it that way.
Apstra can, you're saying.
Sorry, no, the people that are deploying Sonic today, the tier ones.
Oh, they can solve it themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. So they what they can't solve necessarily for themselves is taking Sonic into more complex scenarios. So there's money to be made here, even for big iron vendors in Sonic, by selling their hardware with Sonic running on top of it, right? I don't think any of them would be doing it if those tier ones weren't like poking them with a stick.
I just struggle to see where Sonic fits in the wider market. Like, I think there's a lot of buzz around Sonic right now. Like, there's a lot of people talking about it, blah, blah, blah. But, like, you know, what does this actually end up being like in the world? I think there's a perceived notion that you're going to be not paying for your network operating system, and you can go buy a white box and put Sonic on it. But then there's so many questions around operations and supporting, and whether your teams can have that management layer. Do they have the skill set to manage Sonic on their own? If not, you're now going to get enterprise Sonic from Dell or whoever,
or Apstra,
whoever it is. Or, well, no, that's the thing. Actually, here's a question. Apstra does not, like, they support. In other words,
Sonic, right?
Yeah, they don't support Sonic, right? Like, in other words, they would support Dell's Sonic, which means Dell would support Sonic itself. I'm sure if Apstra found problems, they have a relationship with Dell. But I mean, the point is, now you're paying, as an operator, you're paying for a box from Dell. You're paying for an operating system which is supported, and you're paying for support for Sonic from Dell, and you're paying for a management system from Apstra. So where are you really saving?
From Juniper.
Or Juniper, sorry, of course. But where are you now saving money versus just getting those three things from Arista or Cisco? Do you know what I mean? Like at that point, there's no way you're going to tell me that vendors are going to lose deals from a price perspective, a cost perspective, to a Dell or an EdgeCore selling their hardware with a supported license for Sonic plus a management system from Juniper or Apstra.
Yeah, there's going to be a decent amount of margin stacking going on there.
Of course. And there's no way that you're going to go into an Arista shop today, an operator that's deployed on Arista, and Arista is going to walk away and be like, no, we can't match that price. That's a money deal. You guys can walk away. It's too cheap. Like, I don't think there's that much. Anyway. I don't know where that fits in, the wider picture for the smaller guys. I think for the large operators who are managing this all themselves, they're managing their own hardware supply chain. They're managing their own, they're able to manage Sonic themselves. There could be something to be said for that. And they've built their operations teams around solving the problems in Sonic themselves. That's fine. But for the smaller, wider audience, like smaller DCs, wider audience, I'm not seeing the value. And I think that there's a lot of hype around it, but I'm not too sure where it's going to land.
So we said we weren't going to turn this into a Sonic podcast, but
yeah, no, we should do a dedicated Sonic podcast. Unless you have something
sounds like we should.
That.
You have a lot of strong opinions about this, clearly.
Not strong opinion. I just have thought about it. I mean, I put some thought into, like, where does this all fit in, and why would an operator go and explore Sonic other than hype right now?
Yeah, I guess that the exploratory part is due to cost, right? Because clearly they say it as a way to optimize cost. Yeah, it being free. And most people that have deployed it and A, gone through like the operational overhead, and B, gone with, buying a system from an ODM and then software from another vendor and support from another vendor and then management from another vendor, have realized that they're all trying to make money. Like, we're all trying to make money here.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah. I don't think it ends up saving you money. I think there's a control your own destiny angle, and that kind of resonates with the tier ones a lot, that they can control their own cadence and their own life cycle and all that good stuff, and they're not beholden to anybody. And they have it's an economies of scale thing, right? They have the development teams to operate and design and develop these things. Not everyone does.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to something that Rob said in that unpublished podcast, which we hopefully will publish soon, which was that you should like play to your company's strengths, right? In other words, if you're a company that is built your business around software development, and you have large amounts of software developers on hand, deploying something like Sonic is maybe okay if you plan on taking, as you said, your destiny into your own hands and have the ability to make the changes to Sonic as you see fit to meet your requirements and need, and not have to rely on a vendor or anybody else to put that into place, right? But if your core business is not software development, and your core business is not networking software development or networking in general, then that becomes a challenge. Right, rethink. Like if your core business does not rely around software development and being able to take destiny into your own hands with a network operating system, then I find it hard to imagine that Sonic is really the solution for you right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, you made a good point when I was talking to you, I don't know, a couple of days ago about AAA features and having to lock down the box and do proper RBAC and things of that nature. And Sonic requires sudo to make any config changes.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, not sudo, but doing things as root, I should say, to be technically accurate.
Correct.
I mean, there's definitely like, it's held up to a different level of scrutiny. Like Sonic can get away with a lot right now.
100%. I mean, and we don't like talking about the fact that we work for a vendor, but we do. And a lot of the stuff that I get from my customers asking for features in our own switching software would never fly in Sonic. Like just some of the operational things they ask us as that they assume are in all network operating systems. Like, and in my recent exploration into Sonic, like it just wouldn't. I mean, there's a bunch of work needed there to operationalize it to the level that some of these customers are requesting of us from a vendor and a vendor operating system. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see where Sonic goes and where it lands and whether it keeps picking up steam and things like Apstra certainly made it a lot easier. Like Apstra certainly solved a huge part of that operational problem. But again, it required an enterprise supported version of Sonic, which is only offered by a few people, usually with their own hardware. So now you're buying hardware from a vendor, you're buying a supported version of an operating system from a vendor and a management system from a vendor. Just that existed before. It's a vendor, right? I mean, like you're not going to be saving money. Let's put it that way. Everybody's trying to make a buck off that chain, right? So,
yeah, anyway. For sure. All right, I think we should do an episode on Sonic soon, because clearly you're coming off something that's made you very passionate about it. So we should definitely do an episode. But I think we're mostly done with Apstra and Juniper.
Yeah.
Any closing notes? Otherwise, we can just send it.
No, I feel like I was in a rather negative mindset in this podcast due to our struggles with the audio in the previous one. So apologies to if I came off as negative, rushed. And,
well, the Apstra stuff I think you were pretty positive on. So I think we're good there. You were throwing a lot of stones at Sonic, but we'll dedicate that to its own podcast.
That's fine. Yeah, I was throwing stones at Sonic, but yeah, Apstra was good. Good acquisition, Juniper, I think. And
assuming you didn't pay too much for it, because nobody knows yet. I don't think the numbers come out.
I mean, if you paid $1 billion for Apstra, I don't know. If you paid $500 million, I don't know. If you paid less than that, I mean, I have no idea, because I have no idea how much money they made. So I'm just throwing numbers around.
That's true. I don't know if they ever showed up on any like market share reports or anything like that. I don't think they were big enough for that just yet. I mean, it was cool.
Have to disclose it? Juniper have to disclose that? They won't have to? I don't know how this works. But they're a publicly traded company, right?
We're network engineers, man. Like,
yeah, fuck, I have no idea. I should know this probably, but I don't.
Publicly traded companies have to give financial reports to the market. Yes. But
so I assume next quarter we'll know how much they spent.
We probably will.
Well, whenever they close it. Whenever it closes, I guess. Maybe not next quarter, but whenever this happens.
It'll probably be early next year. They're tied up with their 128T acquisition at the moment.
They spent a lot of money for 128T. I mean, we know that was, right? Didn't they announce how much it was? It was
yeah, over 450 million.
Yeah, that was a lot of money. Yeah. So maybe they spent that kind of money for Apstra too. Who knows? To me, it's a better buy. Like, I'd rather spend 450 million on Apstra.
1.2 billion over, 18 months?
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
I mean, if you're up to me, I would say I'd spend 450 million on Apstra over 128T if I had a choice.
You should just call up Juniper CEO. Tell him
I should. Hey man,
you got some top tips.
You made a mistake, bro. You overpaid for 128T, and who knows what you paid for Apstra? Hopefully for those at Apstra you overpaid. For those at Juniper, you didn't overpay. All right, let's
Yeah, I
wrap it
guess
up. We're just
we'll see.
rambling on now. We've been rambling on for a while.
All
Let's
right.
wrap it up.
Indeed. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in as long as you have, guys. We hope this one was interesting. Sorry about the Sonic ramble. That's going to happen a lot, I think, over the next the next few weeks. Sonic is hot on the brain.
Sure is.
But we hope you learned something. I certainly did. I know a lot more about how Apstra works now. These damn
Do you?
probes
I
and all this intent.
I spoke very quickly about it, so
Well, actually,
hopefully
I
that's
learned
what it
most of it in the podcast, which no one gets to hear.
exactly.
But that's okay. Intent everything, guys. It's where we're heading.
All the things.
Get on the bandwagon.
That's right.
All right. We will
right.
catch you in the next one.
Bye-bye.
Hey, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in. As always, please do let us know any feedback or criticisms you may have. We can be reached on Twitter, YouTube, or our website, ntwr.kn, where you'll find this episode and many others posted. For those of you on YouTube, if you liked the episode, please hit that thumbs up button. And if you didn't like the episode, feel free to hit the thumbs down button twice. On a side note, you know those cliche, these are our opinions and not that of our employer statements you hear all the time? Yeah, we unfortunately have to make one of those. The benefits of working in the industry we want to publicly have an opinion about. We've done our best to remove bias, but we're only human and we make mistakes just like you. Thanks again. We'll see you in the next one.